Commander Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova, watching the alien ship grow larger on the main screen. The vessel was massive, 3 times the size of his own ship, with dark metal plates that looked like armor. Red lights blinked along its hull like angry eyes in the darkness of space. "First contact with the Zephyrians," he said quietly to himself. After months of planning, they were finally here. Dr. Lisa Martinez walked up beside him, her tablet in hand as always. She was small, barely reaching Jake's shoulder, but her mind was sharper than anyone else on the crew. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her brown eyes sparkled with excitement. "The readings are amazing, Commander," she said. "Their ship is using technology we've never seen before. The energy patterns are completely different from anything in our databases." Ryan Cooper, the tactical officer, checked his instruments one more time. He was a big man with steady hands and calm eyes. "All weapon systems are powered down as ordered, sir. We're showing them we come in peace." Amy Stone looked up from her communication station. Her red hair caught the light from her screens as she worked. "Sir, I'm getting their response to our greeting. They're ready to receive our diplomatic team aboard their ship." Jake nodded. This was what they had come for. Earth had sent them to make friends with the Zephyrian Empire, a powerful alien race that controlled dozens of star systems. The Zephyrians had finally agreed to meet with humans after years of refusing contact with other species. "Lisa, Ryan, Amy, you're with me," Jake said. "Let's go make history." The shuttle ride to the Zephyrian ship was short but tense. Through the small windows, they could see other alien vessels nearby, all painted in the same dark colors with red. Markings. The Zephyrian fleet was impressive and frightening at the same time. "Remember," Jake said to his team, "we're here to learn and to show them that humans can be trusted. Be polite, be careful, and follow my lead." The docking bay of the Zephyrian ship was huge and cold. Strange machines lined the walls, and the air smelled different, like metal and something else they couldn't identify. The gravity felt heavier than on human ships, making each step require more effort. A group of Zephyrians waited for them at the entrance. They were tall, much taller than humans, with green scaly skin that looked tough as leather. Their eyes were yellow and moved independently of each other, like a lizard's. They wore dark uniforms with red symbols that probably showed their ranks. The largest Zephyrian stepped forward. His scales were darker than the others, and more scars marked his face and arms. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough. "I am Admiral Kreshtar of the Zephyrian Empire. You are the humans we have heard about." He looked at them like he was. "Studying insects. You are smaller than I expected, and softer looking." Jake kept his face calm, even though the insult was clear. "I am Commander Jake Harrison. This is Dr. Lisa Martinez, our science officer. Ryan Cooper handles our security, and Amy Stone manages our communications. We're honored to meet you, Admiral." The Zephyrian's mouth opened slightly, showing sharp teeth. It might have been a smile, but it didn't look friendly. "Follow me. Our leader wishes to see these famous humans for himself." They walked through long corridors filled with more Zephyrians. The aliens stared at the humans as they passed. Some pointed and made sounds that might have been laughter. Others just watched with their strange yellow eyes, turning their heads to follow the humans' movement. The main hall was enormous, with a high ceiling that disappeared into shadows. Hundreds of Zephyrians filled the space, all watching the small group of humans. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat the largest Zephyrian they had seen yet. "Behold," Admiral Kreshtar announced, the supreme commander of the Zephyrian fleet, His Excellence Vorthik the Conqueror. The supreme commander was ancient. His scales faded to a dull gray-green, but his eyes were still bright and sharp. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire hall without effort. "So these are the humans," he said slowly. the species that claims to be explorers and peacekeepers. He leaned forward on his throne. You look very fragile to me. How do such weak creatures survive in the darkness of space? Jake stepped forward, keeping his voice respectful but firm. We survive through cooperation, excellence. We work together and help each other. That's how we've spread to many worlds and learned to live among the stars. Several Zephyrians made hissing sounds that might have been laughter. The Supreme Commander's eyes narrowed. Cooperation, he repeated. An interesting word for weakness. We Zephyrians survive through strength. The strong rule, the weak serve. It has always been this way. Dr. Martinez couldn't help herself. She had studied dozens of alien cultures, and she found the Zephyrian society fascinating. But excellence, cooperation has allowed humans to achieve things that individual strength cannot. When we work together, we become stronger than the sum of our parts. The hall fell silent. Many Zephyrians stared at Lessa with surprise. A few showed their teeth in what was definitely not a smile. The small female speaks without being asked, Admiral Kreshtar said, his voice cold. Perhaps humans need to learn proper respect. Jake felt tension building in the room. Dr. Martinez meant no disrespect. She's a scientist, and she's genuinely interested in learning about your culture. The Supreme Commander raised one clawed hand. Peace, Admiral. Let the female speak. I am curious about these human ideas. He looked directly at Lisa. Tell me, small one, what has this cooperation brought your species? Lisa's eyes lit up. This was exactly the kind of discussion she had hoped for. We've ended wars on our home planet, Excellence. We've learned to share resources instead of fighting over them. We've built cities that house millions of people. In peace, we've reached the stars not through conquest, but through shared dreams and hard work. Interesting, the Supreme Commander said. And yet you bring weapons to our meeting. Ryan stepped forward slightly. Only for self-defense, Excellence. We hope never to use them. Hope, another Zephyrian officer said with obvious scorn. Another word for weakness. The meeting continued for over an hour. Jake presented gifts from Earth. Amy shared recordings of human music and art, and Ryan demonstrated some of their defensive technology. The Zephyrians seemed more curious than hostile, but the atmosphere remained tense. During a break in the formal presentations, Lisa noticed a display of Zephyrian biotechnology near one wall. The devices were beautiful, grown rather than built, with organic curves that seemed almost alive. Unable to resist her scientific curiosity, she walked over to get a closer look. Fascinating, she whispered, pulling out her tablet to take notes. The integration of biological and mechanical systems is incredible. A young Zephyrian guard noticed her approach. He was smaller than the others, probably inexperienced, and he had been listening to his superior officers talk about human weakness all day. As Lisa reached toward one of the displays to get a better view, he decided to show his strength. Stay back, weak human, he snarled, and shoved Lisa hard away from the display. Lisa, caught completely off guard, stumbled backward. Her small frame couldn't handle the force from the much larger alien. She hit the metal wall behind her with a sound that echoed through the hall. The noise cut through all conversation like a knife. Every human in the room stopped moving. Jake's diplomatic smile disappeared. Ryan's hand moved toward his weapon without conscious thought. Amy's fingers flew across her communication device, sending an emergency signal. For a moment, absolute silence filled the hall. The Zephyrians looked confused by the sudden change in the humans' behavior. Then Admiral Kreshtar laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. See how fragile they are. One small push and the female falls like a broken toy. He looked at Jake with obvious contempt. Is this the strength your cooperation brings you? Jake walked slowly to where Lisa was getting back to her feet. She seemed unhurt, just shaken and embarrassed. But something had changed in the commander's eyes. Something cold and dangerous. "Are you all right, Doctor?" he asked quietly. Lisa nodded, brushing dust from her uniform. "I'm fine, Commander. Just surprised." But Jake could see the small cut on her forehead where she had hit the wall. He could see the fear in her eyes that she was trying to hide. And he could feel something building inside him that had nothing to do with diplomacy. The Zephyrians had made their first mistake. They just didn't know it yet. The emergency signal from Amy Stone's communication device reached the Terra Nova in seconds. Chief Engineer Bobby Clark was the first to see the coded message appear on his screen. His coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. But he didn't notice. He had been in the fleet long enough to know what the code meant. Someone had hurt one of theirs. Bobby's fingers moved across his control panel with practiced speed. Within minutes, the Terra Nova's quantum communication array was sending the same message to every human ship, station, and colony within 50 light years. The message was simple, but carried enormous weight. Code 7. One of our people has been harmed. Dr. Lisa Martinez, Zephyrian Space. All units respond. On the mining station New Hope, Captain Sarah Woods was reviewing supply reports when the message came through. She had never met Dr. Martinez, but that didn't matter. The young woman was human, and that made her family. Sarah immediately ordered her station to battle readiness and began calculating jump coordinates to the Kepler system. The response was automatic, built into human nature through thousands of years of evolution and hundreds of years of space exploration. When early human colonists faced the dangers of unknown worlds, they had learned one crucial lesson: no one survives alone in the darkness. That lesson had become part of human culture, as natural as breathing. Captain Ben Murphy was 3 systems away when the message reached his heavy cruiser Defiant. He didn't hesitate or ask for orders. He simply told his crew, "Set course for Kepler 442, maximum speed. Someone hurt one of ours." His crew understood. Engineer Kate Rogers began pushing the ship's engines beyond their normal limits. Weapons Officer Danny Pierce started loading every missile tube and charging every energy weapon. Medical Officer Dr. Rachel Kim prepared the sick bay for casualties, though she hoped it wouldn't be needed. The beautiful thing about the human response was that it didn't come from any government or military command. It came from the heart of every person who received the message. On the agricultural world of New Eden, former Marine John Davis heard the signal while working in his wheat fields. He immediately started making calls to other veterans living on the planet. Within an hour, New Eden's small militia had grown into a serious fighting force. Farmers who had served in the military years ago cleaned their old weapons and checked their equipment. Teachers who had been combat medics volunteered for medical duties. Even the local mayor, Helen Ross, began coordinating with the orbital defense platforms. The Zephyrians had no idea what they had started: their intelligence. Networks did pick up increased activity in human space, but their analysts dismissed it as routine military exercises. They had studied other species before making contact, and they knew the patterns. Most races responded to threats with either complete submission or formal military challenges. Humans were doing neither. Dr. Alex Chun, working at the Human Research Institute on Mars, received the message while studying alien psychology. He immediately understood what the Zephyrians had failed to grasp. He began broadcasting warnings to every alien government that would listen. "The Zephyrians have made a critical error," he transmitted. "They have harmed a human under diplomatic protection. This is not just an attack on an individual. In human culture, this is an attack on our entire species. I recommend that all civilized governments stay out of the conflict that is about to begin." On the cargo ship Wanderer, Captain Lisa Park received both the emergency signal and Dr. Chan's warning. She immediately implemented Protocol 7, a plan that most humans hoped they would never need to use. Hidden panels opened throughout her ship, revealing weapon systems that had been disguised as cargo handling equipment. Her innocent-looking transport was suddenly a warship. Similar transformations were happening across human space. The freighter, Golden Dream, revealed missile launchers hidden in its cargo holds. The passenger liner Star Princess activated defensive shields that had been built into its hull during construction. Even the small research vessel Curiosity began arming itself with improvised weapons. The genius of human preparation was that it looked like nothing special. Other species built obvious warships with massive guns and heavy armor. Humans built every ship to look peaceful while being ready for war. Their enemies never saw them coming until it was too late. On Earth, Admiral Patricia Martinez was in a meeting when her aide burst through the door with the emergency message. The aide's face was pale as he handed her the communication tablet. "Ma'am, there's been an incident involving your daughter." Patricia read the message twice, her hands steady but her eyes growing cold. Lisa was her only child, following in her mother's footsteps as an explorer and scientist. The girl had inherited her father's gentle nature and her mother's fierce intelligence. She was everything good about humanity. "Contact Fleet Command," Patricia said quietly. "Tell them I'm taking emergency leave. And get me a ship to the Kepler system." Her aide nodded and hurried from the room. He had served under Admiral Martinez for 5 years, and he had never seen her angry before. The calm way she spoke was somehow more frightening than if she had shouted. Meanwhile, on a dozen different worlds, humans were making similar decisions. Professor Mike Thompson at the military academy began calling his former students who are now serving throughout the fleet. Retired General Nancy White started organizing civilian transport ships to carry supplies to wherever they might be needed. The response wasn't just military. Dr. Kevin Park, who taught philosophy and history, began broadcasting messages to human colonies explaining what was happening and why it mattered. Today, someone decided that they could push around a human being just because she was small and seemed helpless, he said. They were wrong. Dr. Martinez isn't helpless because she has something no alien species seems to understand. She has all of us standing behind her. His message spread through human space faster than any official communication. Parents showed it to their children. Teachers played it in schools. Workers listened to it during their breaks. The message was simple but powerful. We protect our own. On the space station horizon, engineer Tom Bradley was working late when the emergency signal arrived. He had never served in the military, but his brother had died defending a human colony from raiders 5 years ago. Tom knew what it meant when someone hurt innocent people. He began making modifications to the station's mining equipment. Asteroid breakers could crack enemy ship hulls just as easily as rocks. Ore processing lasers could cut through armor plating. Loading systems could launch improvised missiles. Within hours, Horizon had become a fortress. The same thing was happening everywhere humans lived and worked. On the frontier world of Last Chance, settlers who had come to farm and mine began preparing for war. On the research station Deep Space, scientists who studied peaceful alien cultures started building weapons. What the Zephyrians didn't understand was that humans had been preparing for this moment for centuries. Not for this specific fight, but for the idea of this fight. The moment when someone would try to hurt them just because they could. The moment when they would have to choose between safety and standing up for what was right. They chose to stand up. All of them, together. Captain Julie Martin was commanding the destroyer Phoenix when the message reached her. She had met Dr. Martinez once at a conference about alien contact protocols. Lisa had been excited about the possibilities of peaceful cooperation with other species. She had believed that understanding could prevent conflicts. Someone had just proved her wrong in the worst possible way. Julie changed course immediately, her ship's engines burning at maximum power toward the Kepler system. She sent a message to every other human ship she could reach. Join us? Someone hurt our people. We're going to make sure it never happens again. The responses came back quickly. On our way. ETA 6 hours. Weapons ready. Let's go get our girl. Back on the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kreshtar was enjoying what he thought was his victory over the weak humans. He had no idea that hundreds of human ships were already moving toward his position. He didn't know that thousands of humans were preparing for war. He was about to learn that pushing around a human girl was the worst mistake of his life. The storm was coming, and it was bigger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The first sign that something was wrong came from the Zephyrian outer monitoring stations. Sensor operator Vextel was watching his screens when dozens of new contacts appeared at the edge of the system. Ships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel all around the Kepler system, but they weren't moving in attack formations. "Sir," Vextel called to his supervisor, "I'm reading multiple human vessels entering the system. They appear to be maintaining defensive positions." Senior Monitor Kesvar looked at the display with mild interest. "How many ships?" 47. "So far, sir, and more are arriving every few minutes." Kesvar shrugged his massive shoulders. "Probably reinforcements for their diplomatic mission. Keep watching them, but don't worry. Humans are known to be cautious." What Kesvar didn't understand was that he was seeing something that had never happened before in galactic history. Every human ship in range was coming to Kepler 442, not because they had been ordered to, but because they chose to. Captain Ben Murphy's heavy cruiser Defiant was the first military vessel to arrive. He took position just outside the asteroid belt and began scanning the Zephyrian fleet. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Wells, whistled softly at the readings. "Captain, they have over 200 ships in this system. Our entire fleet here won't be enough for a direct fight." Ben smiled grimly. "We're not here for a fair fight, Lieutenant. We're here to bring our people home." As more human ships arrived, they began forming a loose sphere around the inner system where the Zephyrian fleet waited. To alien observers, it looked like the humans were surrounding themselves, but those who understood human military thinking recognized it for what it was: a trap with the Zephyrians in the middle. On the mining ship Rockbreaker, Captain Danny Pierce was converting his ship's equipment into weapons. The massive drills used for asteroid mining could punch through the heaviest armor. The explosive charges meant for breaking up rocks could crack open enemy ships. His crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for a battle they hoped wouldn't come. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we're getting a message from Admiral Martinez. She's requesting a full status report on all human assets in the system." Danny looked up from the weapon modifications he was working on. "Admiral Martinez? I thought she was on Earth." "No, sir. She's aboard the battleship Vengeance, about 4 hours out. She's taken personal command of the rescue operation." The news spread quickly through the human fleet. Admiral Patricia Martinez was coming, and she was bringing the most powerful ship in the human navy. More importantly, she was coming for her daughter. Meanwhile, on the surface of the Zephyrian homeworld, intelligence analysts were starting to worry. Reports were coming in from across their territory about unusual human activity. Ships that had been carrying cargo were suddenly showing weapons signatures. Peaceful research stations were activating defensive systems. Even human colonies near Zephyrian space were mobilizing their militias. General Vector, the Empire's chief intelligence officer, brought his concerns to the Supreme Commander's palace. The ancient ruler listened with growing irritation as his general explained the situation. "You're telling me," the Supreme Commander said slowly, that the humans are mobilizing their entire species because we disciplined one small female? That appears to be the case, Excellence. Our analysts estimate that over 3,000 human vessels are currently moving toward various positions around our territory. The Supreme Commander's yellow eyes narrowed dangerously. 3,000 ships? That's impossible. No species has ever mobilized that quickly. The reports are confirmed, Excellence. And they're still coming. What the Zephyrians couldn't understand was that humans didn't need time to decide whether to fight. The decision had been made for them the moment Lisa Martinez hit that wall. Every human in space knew instinctively that if they didn't respond now, if they let this pass, it would happen again to someone else. On the frontier world of New Frontier, former soldier Kate Johnson was organizing the local defense force. She had retired from the military to become a teacher, but her old training came back quickly. The colonists worked through the night, setting up defensive positions and preparing evacuation plans for the children. Miss Johnson, one of her former students, asked, "Why is everyone so scared?" "It's just one person who got hurt." Kate knelt down to look the child in the eyes. "It's not just one person, honey. When someone hurts any of us, just because they think they can, they're hurting all of us. We have to show them that we protect each other, no matter what." The child nodded seriously, not fully understanding, but sensing the importance of the moment. Across human space, similar conversations were happening. Parents explained to their children why Daddy was cleaning his old military rifle. Teachers told their students why school might be canceled if the fighting started. Workers explained to each other why they were volunteering for dangerous jobs. Human response was remarkable, not just for its speed, but for its completeness. Every person, no matter how far from the action, found a way to contribute. Farmers increased food production to feed the fleet. Factory workers switched to making ammunition and spare parts. Even children helped by taking care of smaller kids. While adults prepared for war. Dr. Kevin Park continued his broadcasts from the university, trying to help other species understand what they were witnessing. "The Zephyrians have made a fundamental error," he explained to anyone listening. "They believe that strength comes from hierarchy and domination. Humans understand that true strength comes from unity and shared purpose. When you attack one of us, you attack the idea that people should be free to explore and learn without fear." His words reached not just humans, but other alien species who were watching the situation with growing concern. Many of them began quietly, moving their ships away from areas where fighting might occur. On the research station Deep Space, Dr. Rachel Torres was working with her team to analyze Zephyrian ship designs. They had studied the aliens' technology for months as part of the diplomatic preparation, and now that information was being used for a very different purpose. "Their shields are strong against energy weapons," she reported to the fleet commanders. "But they have vulnerabilities to kinetic projectiles. Their engines produce a lot of heat, making them easy targets for heat-seeking missiles." The information spread through the human fleet instantly. Every captain and tactical officer began adjusting their battle plans based on the scientific analysis. This was how humans fought differently from other species. They used every advantage they could find, no matter how small. Captain Helen Ross, commanding the converted passenger liner New Hope, received the tactical data and immediately began modifying her approach. Her ship wasn't built for fighting, but it carried 2,000 colonists who had volunteered to help with the rescue mission. They might not be soldiers, but they were humans, and that meant they wouldn't give up. "Attention all ships, Admiral." Martinez's voice came over the fleet communication system as her battleship entered the system. "This is Admiral Patricia Martinez, taking command of all human forces in the Kepler system. Our mission is simple: retrieve our people and ensure this never happens again." The response from the fleet was immediate and unanimous. "Yes, Mom." Admiral Martinez looked at the tactical display showing the hundreds of human ships now surrounding the Zephyrian fleet. Her daughter was somewhere in that enemy formation, probably scared and confused. But Lisa wouldn't be alone much longer. "Send a message to the Zephyrian commander," the admiral ordered. "Tell him he has 1 hour to return our people unharmed. After that, we take them back ourselves." The message was transmitted on all frequencies, in multiple languages, so there could be no misunderstanding. The Zephyrians had 1 hour to make the right choice. The storm had gathered. Now it was time to see if the aliens were smart enough to get out of its way. The hour passed slowly on both sides. Admiral Kreshtar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human ships on his displays. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Over 400 human vessels now surrounded his fleet, and more were still arriving. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported nervously, "the humans have positioned ships at every possible escape route. If we try to leave the system, we'll have to fight through them." Kreshtar snarled, showing his sharp teeth. "Let them come. We have superior weapons and stronger ships. These soft humans will break the moment we show them real Zephyrian strength." But the Supreme Commander was not so confident. From his detention cell, Commander Jake Harrison could hear the growing panic in the alien voices outside. The Zephyrians were starting to realize they had made a terrible mistake. "Dr. Martinez," Jake whispered to Lisa, who was sitting in the cell next to his. "Are you hurt? Can you move?" Lisa touched the small bandage on her forehead where she had hit the wall. "I'm fine, Commander. Just a small cut. But I think we might be in more trouble than we planned." Ryan Cooper, locked in the third cell, managed a weak smile. "Actually, Doc, I think the Zephyrians are the ones in trouble. That emergency signal Amy sent reached our people. By now, half the human fleet is probably heading this way." Amy Stone, in the fourth cell, nodded toward the sounds coming from outside. "Listen to them. They're scared. You can hear it in their voices. The human prisoners were right." Throughout the Zephyrian ship, crew members were talking in worried whispers. They had expected to face a small human diplomatic fleet, not hundreds of warships commanded by one of humanity's most famous admirals. As the deadline approached, Admiral Martinez gave her final orders to the human fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Martinez. In 5 minutes, we begin rescue operations. Remember, our goal is to bring our people home safely. But if the Zephyrians want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." Captain Ben Murphy, aboard the Defiant, checked his weapon systems one last time. His ship was loaded with the newest human military technology, but he hoped he wouldn't need to use it. "All stations report ready, Admiral." Similar reports came from across the fleet. Captain Danny Pierce on the converted mining ship Rock Breaker had turned his industrial equipment into fearsome weapons. Captain Helen Ross on the passenger liner New Hope had organized her civilian volunteers into damage control teams. Even the smallest ships carried crews ready to fight for their captured friends. The moment the hour ended, Admiral Martinez's voice filled space. "Zephyrian fleet, you have failed to return our people. We are now coming to get them. Stand down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Admiral Kreshtar's response was immediate and arrogant. "Human Admiral, you are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now, and we might let your people live as our servants." The silence that followed was deadly. Then Admiral Martinez spoke again, her voice cold as space itself. "Wrong answer. All ships begin the rescue operation." What happened next shocked every military expert who later studied the battle. Instead of charging forward in a massive attack, the human ships moved with perfect coordination. Each vessel had a specific job, and they carried it out with deadly precision. The first wave wasn't warships at all. Captain Tom Bradley led a group of modified cargo vessels that released thousands of small objects into space. The Zephyrians initially thought they were missiles, but the objects didn't explode. Instead, they began jamming Zephyrian communications and sensors. What are those things? Admiral Kreshtar demanded that his communications officer was frantically working at his controls. Sir, they're some kind of electronic warfare devices. We're losing contact with our outer ships. While the Zephyrians struggled with their disabled systems, the second wave struck. Captain Sarah Woods led a squadron of converted mining ships that used their industrial lasers to slice through the enemy formation. The weapons weren't designed for space combat, but they cut through Zephyrian ship hulls like paper. Impossible, Kreshtar shouted as he watched his ships being destroyed by what looked like simple work vessels. How are they penetrating our armor so easily? The answer came from Dr. Rachel Torres' research. The humans had studied Zephyrian metallurgy and found the exact frequency that would weaken their hull materials. Science had given them the edge that pure military force could not. Admiral Martinez watched the battle from her command center with grim satisfaction. Phase 3, execute. The third wave was the most terrifying of all. Ships that had looked like harmless transports suddenly revealed hidden weapon systems. The passenger liner New Hope opened concealed missile bays and fired a devastating barrage. Research vessels activated powerful energy weapons disguised as scientific instruments. But the real shock came when ordinary human crew members began performing impossible feats. Engineer Kate Rogers jury-rigged a damaged engine to explode like a bomb, taking out 3 Zephyrian ships. Pilot Mark Wilson flew his damaged fighter directly into an enemy cruiser's bridge, sacrificing himself to save his friends. The Zephyrians had never seen anything like it. Other species fought with honor and followed established rules of war. Humans fought with creativity, determination, and a willingness to sacrifice everything for each other. Admiral, his tactical officer reported to Kreshtar, we've lost 60% of our fleet. The humans are breaking through our lines everywhere. Kreshtar couldn't believe it. His superior technology was useless against human ingenuity. His larger ships couldn't handle the humans' swarming tactics. Worst of all, every time they destroyed a human vessel, 2 more seemed to take its place. The turning point came when Admiral Martinez herself led the final assault on the Zephyrian flagship. Her battleship Vengeance punched through the enemy defenses like they weren't there, supported by dozens of smaller vessels that covered her approach. All boarding teams, prepare for assault, the Admiral ordered. She was going to rescue her daughter personally. Chief Warrant Officer Corinne Lewis led the first boarding party through the Zephyrian ship's hull. The aliens had never dealt with human soldiers in close combat before. Corinne and her team moved through the corridors like ghosts, using tactics that seemed impossible to predict. Where are they? A Zephyrian guard asked his companion as they searched for the human intruders. The answer came from above as Corinne dropped from an air vent, stunning both aliens before they could react. Human soldiers didn't fight fair. They fought to win. Meanwhile, in the detention area, the human prisoners could hear the sounds of battle getting closer. Dr. Martinez pressed against the bars of her cell, listening to the familiar sound of human weapons. They came for us, she whispered in amazement. They actually came. Commander Harrison smiled grimly. Did you ever doubt they would? We're humans, Lisa. We don't leave our people behind. The cell doors burst open as Karen Lewis and her team reached the detention area. Time to go home, people, she said simply, but the rescue was only half completed. As they fought their way back to the Vengeance, Admiral Martinez made a decision that would echo through history. Attention Zephyrian fleet, she broadcast on all frequencies. You attacked one of our people under diplomatic protection. You refused to return her when asked politely. You chose war over peace. Now you face the consequences. Admiral Kreshtar watching his empire's fleet being destroyed by creatures he had thought were weak, finally understood the truth. Humans weren't weak at all. They were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, precisely because they looked harmless. "We surrender," he transmitted desperately. "We surrender." But Admiral Martinez wasn't finished. "The galaxy needs to understand what happens when you hurt innocent people," she said. "This lesson will be remembered." The battle ended, with the human fleet victorious and Dr. Martinez safe. But the real victory was just beginning. 3 days after the battle ended, Admiral Patricia Martinez sat across from her daughter in the medical bay of the Vengeance. Dr. Lisa Martinez was physically fine, with only a small scar on her forehead to remind her of the incident. But both women knew that something much bigger had changed. "Mom," Lisa said quietly, "I never wanted any of this to happen. I was just trying to look at their technology. I thought if I showed interest in their culture, it might help with the peace talks." Admiral Martinez reached across and took her daughter's hand. "You did nothing wrong, Lisa. You were being exactly what humanity needs you to be: curious, peaceful, and hopeful. What happened to you wasn't your fault." Through the medical bay window, they could see the remains of the Zephyrian fleet. Most of the alien ships were damaged or destroyed. The survivors floated helplessly in space, waiting to be rescued by human medical teams. "But look what happened because of me," Lisa continued. "Hundreds of people died in that battle. Families lost. Fathers and mothers and children. All because someone pushed me." Her mother squeezed her hand gently. "Listen to me carefully, Lisa. Those people didn't die because you got pushed. They died because the Zephyrians chose violence over understanding. They died because someone decided that hurting innocent people was acceptable. We had to show them it's not." On the bridge of his damaged flagship, Admiral Kreshtar was learning the same lesson in a much harder way. His once proud fleet was in ruins. Worse, reports were coming in from across Zephyrian space about human fleets appearing near their colonies and military bases. "Sir," his communications officer reported nervously, "we're receiving messages from our outer territories. Human ships have surrounded our bases at Rigel Prime, Alpha Centauri, and the Vega system. They're not attacking, but they're making it clear that they could." Kreshtar stared at the tactical display, showing red marks wherever human ships had appeared. In just 3 days, the humans had positioned forces throughout Zephyrian space without firing a shot. It was a demonstration of power that made the battle at Kepler look small. "What do they want?" he asked. The answer came from Admiral Martinez herself. She appeared on his main screen, speaking from the bridge of her battleship. Behind her, Kreshtar could see human officers working calmly at their stations, as if surrounding an entire alien empire was just another day's work. "Admiral Kreshtar," she said, her voice firm but not angry, "I want to discuss the future. Your empire and my species need to reach an understanding." "What kind of understanding?" Kreshtar asked, though he suspected he already knew. "The kind where no one ever hurts another innocent person just because they can," Admiral Martinez replied. "The kind where differences are settled with words instead of violence. The kind where exploration and learning are protected, not punished." Within hours, representatives from dozens of alien governments began arriving in the Kepler system. Word of the human response to the Zephyrian aggression had spread throughout the galaxy faster than any news in recent history. Everyone wanted to understand what they had witnessed. Ambassador Veltin of the Altarian Republic was the first to request a meeting with Admiral Martinez. His species were known as peaceful philosophers who avoided conflict at all costs. He was curious about the human approach to protecting peace. "Admiral Martinez," he said during their meeting, "my people have studied the battle reports. We are amazed by what your species accomplished. but we are also concerned. Your response seems disproportionate to the original offense. Admiral Martinez considered his words carefully. Ambassador, may I ask you a question? If someone hurt one of your people, what would your government do? We would protest diplomatically, Velten replied. We would file formal complaints with the Galactic Council. We would seek peaceful resolution through established channels. And if that didn't work? If the aggressor ignored your protests and continued hurting your people? Velten was quiet for a long moment. We would withdraw, move our people to safety, and avoid further contact. That's the difference between us, Admiral Martinez explained. Humans don't run away when bullies show up. We stand our ground and make sure the bullying stops. Not just for us, but for everyone. Dr. Kevin Park, who had been broadcasting throughout the crisis, continued his educational programs about human nature. His latest broadcast was watched by millions of beings across the galaxy. What you witnessed, he explained, was not human. Aggression. It was human protective instinct in action. When Dr. Martinez was pushed against that wall, every human who heard about it felt like their own family member had been attacked. We responded as a family defends itself. His words helped. Many alien species understand why the human response had been so massive and so quick. Humans didn't see themselves as separate nations or colonies. They saw themselves as one people spread across the stars. On the Zephyrian homeworld, the Supreme Commander was facing the greatest crisis in his empire's history. Reports continued to arrive about human forces positioned throughout their territory. But the humans weren't attacking or demanding surrender. They were just waiting. What do they want from us? He demanded of his advisors. General Vekmer, who had been studying human military doctrine, had an answer. Excellence, I believe they want us to change. Not our government or our territory, but our behavior. They want us to stop hurting innocent people. That's ridiculous, the Supreme Commander snarled. We are Zephyrians. We take what we want and rule through strength. With respect, Excellence, the general replied carefully, that approach led us to this situation. Perhaps it's time to consider that strength comes in many forms. The real change began to happen when individual Zephyrians started meeting humans face to face. Captain Sarah Woods, commanding the mining ship that had participated in the battle, was helping rescue survivors from damaged Zephyrian vessels. She found herself working alongside young Zephyrian engineer named Polanex. Why are you helping us? Polanex asked as they worked together to repair a damaged life support system. We attacked your people. We hurt your friend. Sarah continued, working while she answered. Because you're hurt and need help. That's what people do for each other. Polanex was confused. But we are enemies, are we? Sarah asked, looking at him directly. You didn't push Dr. Martinez. You didn't order the attack on our diplomatic team. You're just a person trying to do your job and get home to your family. Why would I consider you an enemy? Similar conversations were happening throughout the system as human rescue teams worked alongside Zephyrian survivors. The aliens were amazed to discover that humans treated them with respect and kindness, even after the battle. Dr. Lisa Martinez, despite everything that had happened to her, requested permission to continue her research on Zephyrian culture. I still believe that understanding each other is the key to peace, she told her mother. What happened to me was wrong, but giving up on that understanding would be worse. Admiral Martinez was proud of her daughter's courage, but she was also concerned. Are you sure you want to continue this work? After what they did to you? Lisa touched the small scar on her forehead and smiled. Mom, someone has to build bridges between our species. If I don't do it because I'm afraid, then what was the point of everything that happened here? The peace negotiations took place on a neutral space station with representatives from dozens of species watching. The agreement that emerged was simple but revolutionary. The Zephyrian Empire agreed to protect diplomats and researchers from all species. They agreed to settle disputes through peaceful means. In return, humans would share some of their defensive technologies and provide assistance with humanitarian projects. But the most important part of the agreement wasn't written down anywhere. It was the understanding that spread throughout the galaxy. Humans would protect anyone who couldn't protect themselves. They would stand against bullies and aggressors, no matter how powerful. Admiral Kreshtar, who had lost his position and most of his fleet, was given a chance at redemption. He was assigned to work with human advisors to develop new training programs for Zephyrian military officers, teaching them to see strength as protection rather than domination. "I don't understand," he confessed to Captain Ben Murphy during one of their meetings. "Your people defeated us completely. Why offer us friendship instead of demanding our submission?" Ben smiled and thought about how to explain it. "Because, Admiral, winning a war isn't the same as solving a problem. We didn't fight you to conquer you. We fought to make sure no one else gets hurt the way Dr. Martinez was hurt." 6 months later, Dr. Lisa Martinez returned to the Kepler system aboard a new diplomatic vessel. This time, she was greeted with full honors by the Zephyrian fleet. Admiral Kreshtar himself escorted her to the research facilities, where human and Zephyrian scientists were working together on projects that benefited both species. "Doctor," Kreshtar said as they walked through the laboratories, "I owe you an apology. Not just for what happened to you, but for failing to understand what your people truly represent." Lisa looked around at the humans and Zephyrians working side by side, sharing knowledge and building friendship where there had once been hostility. "What do we represent, Admiral?" "Hope," he replied simply. "You represent the hope that people can be better than their worst impulses."